Good afternoon, class. My name is Brandon Mahoney. Today I'll be talking to you about the role of emergency management in planning and mitigating climate change and sea level rise. So one important thing to know about this topic is that climate change is actually a twofold issue, because not only is the rising global temperature a problem, but also the disasters that are a consequence of the higher global temperature. So first, starting with climate change itself, one definition that I really liked in climate change mitigation is that it is an anthropogenic intervention to reduce the sources or enhance the sinks of greenhouse gases. And what this means is that we can either attack it at the source, which is pollution from factories, automobiles, civilians, and lower those through various taxations and regulations, or we can enhance the sinks of greenhouse gases, such as replanting trees, expanding forests, lowering ocean acidification so the ocean can absorb more carbon dioxide naturally. So these efforts will require action on individual, corporate, and governmental levels so we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and lower the impact of global climate change. So the thing about climate change planning is that the normal all hazards approach may only look at 10 to 15 years in the future for a city or a county and anticipate those disasters. But with climate change, you really have to look 50 to 100 years down the road and anticipate the rise in sea level and how that would impact your district or community, because an extra 6 feet in some cases predicted could put entire cities underwater. In his 2013 executive order address on climate change, President Obama actually listed some major threats to climate change as more frequent intense storms, heat waves, droughts, extreme flooding, rising sea levels, permafrost thawing, and ocean acidification. Up here on the right, you have a picture of the extreme flooding in Peru that occurred from the 2017 El Nino storm. It's actually killed 72 people. And these storms become more frequent as the ocean gets warmer. Obviously, it can get warmer from climate change. So it makes us more vulnerable, especially these countries with infrastructure, to these major storms. And right below that, you have an extreme drought. This picture is from Nigeria. And so what I want to show here is the contrast that rising temperatures can cause. So areas with already very little water, it exacerbates that problem, makes access to water much more difficult for those locals. And then in these wetter areas that are more frequent storms, it could cause extreme flooding. Rising sea levels and flooding is obviously a big concern from global climate change. And so 3 strategies that we can use to mitigate this are by protecting natural barriers, hardening artificial barriers, and educating our citizens about the threat. Cities all across the globe are implementing variations of these strategies. For example, New York is currently planning to reinforce their beaches, build stronger bulkheads, erect more storm walls and levees, as well as rock breakers offshore. Boston, on the other hand, is emphasizing community awareness by educating citizens on essential supplies and how to develop home emergency plans for various hazards they can face. Rotterdam, which is actually in the Netherlands and is pictured to the top right here, is moving towards more sustainable and ecologically friendly solutions by rebuilding sand dunes and expanding its shoreline with sediment. They're doing this because the city is actually 90% below sea level and is surrounded by rivers. You can see down here to the bottom right these huge dikes they've had to build in the past to prevent storm surges and massive flooding from overcoming the city. So now they're moving towards more ecologically friendly and sustainable solutions to offset these costs. The federal government can also play a large role in mitigating climate change. One way they do this is by imposing regulations and taxes on high polluters, such as a carbon tax. The EPA has been famous for this over the past 40 years, implementing taxes for chloroforms and CO2 emissions. They also fund energy research and development programs. So the entire government, including the Department of Defense, Department of Agriculture, Department of Urban Development, all have been working for different building regulations and codes to make their buildings and appliances more efficient. FEMA especially incentivizes states to invest in infrastructure improvements and mitigation efforts. They do this by offering hazard mitigation grants to states who are especially working to mitigate the hazards and risks of rising sea levels and global warming. Although it may not seem imminent, climate change and rising sea levels are a major threat to communities all across the globe and cannot be stopped immediately. The emergency management community needs to begin taking steps now to plan for and mitigate these disasters to ensure the safety of our planet and our citizens. This concludes my presentation. Here are my references and a picture of me. Thank you.